Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking the difference between last week and this week for the Chicago Cubs. We're going to be talking the Major League Draft, and I heard some rumblings about something that might have happened, that the Cubs signed somebody. I'm not sure. Maybe Alex knows. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You could see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Season is unfortunately over. They just crowned the AHL champion. But that should not stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com and picking up a hat, shirt, jersey, and signing up for season ticket packages and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how have you been, my friend?
Oh, I've been fine. This week is a bit less frustrating than last week in terms of baseball. So can't complain about that. As you said, they got somebody, and I actually do know who it is, and I will bring it up very soon. But, I mean, yeah, not too many complaints now.
So I just learned that, so when we record the podcast, it's usually as my daughter's getting ready for bed, and the room where I record is across the hall from her bedroom. And my wife says that every week she mocks us from, well, at least she can hear me. So I recorded her mocking me.
Hey everybody, Sports Chicago Election Bears.
I'd say she nailed it.
Sounds just like you. Yeah, sounds just like you. I can't wait till she does your imitation or your John Lackey imitation.
I know. If she starts doing a John Lackey impersonation, an impersonation of our impersonation of John Lackey, it's going to be a crowning achievement as a parent.
It should honestly be a regular soundbite on our show.
I'm going to have to work on that one. But yeah, so the big news obviously is, the Cardinals manager. So the Cubs Cardinals game 3 is on while we're recording this, and their manager just has a punchy face.
I still like him better than Matheny. Matheny pissed me off.
Yeah, he was. I don't even think Matheny's parents liked Matheny. Like
he was just, you could tell the culture was just not good under him.
No, not at all. So yeah, the big news obviously is something that we've been talking about for, I don't know, since the season started, and the voices have gotten louder and louder. The Cubs went out and signed Greg Kimbrel. Greg Kimbrel?
Say that clearly again.
Greg
Use
Kimbrel?
your words.
Can we say it? Can we say it out loud? Is it a real thing? Or do we have to wait till he actually throws a pitch?
No, you can say it. It's official. You can say it. Just breathe in and let it out.
Craig Kimbrel is a Chicago Cub. That feels good to say.
Yes, it does. And I can kind of look back at the last week, kind of leading up to it. And as you remember, Craig Kimbrel was a hot topic because the deadline passed for having to give up a draft pick in order to sign him. So the compensation pick, that whole thing expired. So the rumors started flying. And the whole time I'm thinking it's a pipe dream for the Cubs. It's a pipe dream. They made it clear that they had to, quote, get creative to get him. And then Ken Rosenthal says, Cubs are pushing hard. You raise your eyebrows a little bit. And then I went on to my other show that I do, Climbing the Ivy, the Cubbies Crib podcast for Fansided. And me and my co-hosts there were kind of saying, yeah, I'm still not getting my hopes up, yada, yada, yada. Then the next day, I start hearing more of the rumblings that the talks are going between the two. Your eyebrows start to raise a little more. And then I'm on Twitter at around 7:30. I think it was last Wednesday, Tuesday, sometime last week. And then Rosenthal just says, Cubs agree to terms with Craig Kimbrel. And I literally start breaking out in a happy dance. I kid you not.
Yeah, so I saw it from an unreliable source first. And
oh, really?
I was like, not saying that they're wrong. It was just a source that I would not be like, it was a source where I would confirm it before I went public with it. So I saw it and I was like, I don't believe this. And then I waited shortly and then I saw reports from sources that I do trust. And then I went, oh my goodness. And then even until they had the official presser, I'm not sure I believe this yet, because this seems like major need, filling it with the perfect peg and at the right time. And it just seemed like everything came together too perfectly. And the Cubs fan in me just was not going to let it, me be happy until it was official.
This source, you saw it from first. Who was it? Was it even like a verified reporter? Did they have a blue check mark next to them?
No, it was not. It was not.
See, when I saw the Rosenthal
it was somebody
tweet,
that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it was just somebody that says a lot of things, not of all Cubs related. And it just happened. Somebody retweeted that person. And I was like, I've seen this person's tweets a lot, and they're not just Chicago. It's all baseball. And they speculate a lot. And
I see.
Sometimes right, sometimes wrong. I think they get rumors and then they find the one that seems most credible and run with it. So they seem right some of the time. But when I saw that, I was like, yeah, I'm not buying this yet.
Yeah, so when I saw the Rosenthal tweet, I had to make sure it wasn't a fake account, because you always have to be aware for the fake accounts. And, they'll have Ken Rosenthal, they'll sometimes try to use what's that emoji? It's like either a cloud emoji or like a white bang emoji to make it look like a check mark outline at first. But then you look and you see that it's not an official check mark and that the handle isn't exactly what Ken Rosenthal's is. And you're like, oh, it's fake. But no, I verified very quickly, check mark, it was Ken Rosenthal. And there was about a split 2 or 3 seconds where I just froze in amazement and just kind of had to process everything, and then went, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Yeah, it's exciting news. And, he's already done some bullpen sessions. They're sending to Mesa to do a quote extended spring training, or a truncated spring training, and then he's going to go to I guess for lack of a better term, a rehab start or a stint in Iowa before he comes up. So, we don't know exactly when he's going to be here. Unless you've heard something new that I haven't heard.
Well, I think the speculation that they're trying to shoot for is like 3-ish weeks, but that can change. You never know. Could be a little longer. It could be about that time. I think one thing that we all have to keep in mind in this situation is it is incredibly different to work out most of the season, then do an abbreviated spring training, and then come back. So he may not be 100% even when he's 100% to play. I think that's just something we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is the guy has definitely been throwing. There's no doubt in my mind he hasn't been throwing.
Yes.
So his arm is probably in very good shape. The concern you have, not concerns, but the two things you want to make sure that don't happen is, one, that he doesn't pull a hamstring or a quad or one of the non-throwing muscles. It's like his arm, shoulder are fine, but the other muscles that he may or may not have been working, getting a ground ball and throwing it to first base, who knows what shape he's in for that. So you want to get him, you don't want him having a weird injury early on, not getting the proper, quote, spring training. The other thing is facing live batters and keeping your arm loose are two different things. So you don't want him to go into a game situation and get batted around and suddenly you have a closer that's lacking confidence.
Yeah, exactly. It's very different to, even if you're on a mound and you're throwing over a plate, it's different when there's a batter there and when there's not a batter there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. Sure, this game's looking right now like you could probably use him because it's looking to be tight. But, he's not a rental. The Cubs signed him to a 3-year deal. So we've got him this year and then 2 following seasons. So you want to make sure that, you're taking full advantage. It's not a rental.
This is why I think this deal is perfect. 3 years is exactly what I could ask for in this situation, because any less, you don't want it to be just a rental, because it's like, well, if he doesn't pitch 100% his first month, then, well, his tenure here is pretty much over. But you also don't want to lock him up 4+ years because he is over 30, and you don't want to be stuck with him when he's older and he's past his prime and he's not as good anymore. 3 years, I think it's a perfect amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. You get your window is still there. It's not a cheap contract, but it's not absolutely ridiculous for the player you're getting. So it works out to about 14 a year. And then this year I'll be prorated, obviously. So, it's worked out so well. No draft compensation. The deal came through quickly. You're going to get him way sooner than you would with the trade deadline.
Oh God. Yeah.
So, I mean, even if you're talking, from what I'm hearing from, the beat writers and things, that they're saying conservatively July 1st is like a conservative date.
Which makes sense, beginning of the month. It makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, so if we're saying that's a safe date, you're getting him well before the trade deadline and not having to give anything up for him. So that's just,
and even if it's a week later, that's still before.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful thing. It just, it's so good. This is such a good signing, and it's going to bolster a bullpen staff that has really just had their share of injury. They've had, their share of ups and downs. They just needed that boost, and I think this is going to get it. You've starting to get you're getting Strop back. You're starting to see what's his face pitch better. Oh my God,
that could apply to several guys.
What's his name that you sent down?
Carl Edwards Jr.
Carl Edwards Jr. You sent him down.
He's been very good since coming back.
I mean, especially in the last couple of weeks, he's been really good. So you've got Edwards starting to pitch better. You're getting Strop back. Now you're going to infuse
C-Shack.
Yeah, you're going to be infusing Craig Kimbrel into this. And just imagine if you could get a healthy Morrow. And I mean, that's a pipe dream, but
I'm still not counting on that. But it would be a nice added bonus.
But could you?
Because remember, I mean, I would love it.
Yeah, that would be Strop Your standard setup: Strop in 7th, Morrow in the 8th, Kimbrel in the 9th, and suddenly you go from hold your breath and pray during the last couple innings to if you got the lead after the 5th inning, good night.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the rest of the bullpen too. Cishek is really good to bring in if there's a fire to be put out. You could do some shifting there. I think Pedro Strop's natural position is 8th inning, so the more you see him there, the better. I still think that they could use one more solidified reliever for depth, because especially in this day and age, you can never have enough bullpen depth. I like what Brandon Kinsler is bringing lately. He's been very good, but Kyle Ryan has struggled overall. He had a nice outing last night. Brad Brock has
really fallen off the wagon.
I've defended Brad Brock, but that outing against, was it the Rockies last week, the night they got Kimbrel? I mean, it was almost kind of poetic that they nearly blew a game on the night that they announced they agreed to terms with Craig Kimbrel. It was almost like it was meant to be. So there's still some shakiness in that bullpen that I think could be addressed, but this was the big move, and it was probably the most ideal move to make, because not only are you getting a guy that leads the whole league in saves all time right now, active, I should say, with 333, you got a reliever who has a 191 career ERA. You have a guy that has a 196 career FIP. You have a guy that has over 800 strikeouts in 532 and 2/3 innings. You're not giving up any assets. You signed him. You're spending money. You're not giving up any assets.
No, you're not. I fully expect the Cubs to still be active in the trade market to bring in somebody, but I feel like bringing in Craig Kimbrel was a necessity. I feel like if you add somebody else, I'm not going to go as far as saying a luxury, but it's not a necessity either. It's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, so it's neither one of the extremities. It's somewhere in the middle. And I feel like they will add somebody, and it won't be anybody flashy. It'll be kind of like the Jesse Chavez move last year, where it's going to be a rental player, and it's going to be a veteran that's hitting a high point, and they're going to ride it out for the rest of the year, and then work on it again next year.
It's funny because you look at what the Cubs have done over the years, and they have done almost everything imaginable in the bullpen. They have added some of the best closers in the game. They just added Kimbrel. They had Aroldis Chapman when they won the World Series. They had Wade Davis in 2017. He was way past his prime, but hey, Fernando Rodney had a great run, and he was on the Cubs in 2015. But they've also just found a lot of diamonds in the rough. They've brought in guys on waiver claims and minor league deals that, while not long-term solutions, have had good short-term effects for the team in the bullpen. So, yeah, you're probably going to see something like that. I know people have been talking about Will Smith and Tony Watson from the Giants, and they may cost you something. You don't have a lot to give in terms of young assets. I don't think the Cubs want to give up Edbert Alzolay or Nico Hoerner. I mean, Nico Hoerner's hurt right now, but Edbert Alzolay is probably going to be someone they're going to be relying on for the future.
Yeah, I think those two you don't want to touch.
And other than that, you really don't have much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they have to give up. That's why I don't think they're going to be able to add a true leadoff hitter like we talked about last week. I really don't see that. I think your veteran bat is Cargo. I mean, that's the one you got. But middle relief guy on an expiring contract, they don't cost you much. And I know the Cubs don't have a lot in their in the way of trade bait, but those guys also don't cost much, period. You can get a guy that's, even if in a depleted farm system, somebody that's, towards the middle of your ranked guys.
Look at Jesse Chavez last year. They traded him for nothing.
Yeah. Those kind of guys, it's salary cap relief for a bottom team, and then they take a flyer on some young guy. So they add another, potential guy. So they're already bad anyway. They're just giving this guy up in salary relief. So it's
yeah, exactly.
you can add those kind of guys. But leadoff hitter, I just don't see the Cubs trading Nico Horner unless they're going to get something huge for him, and I don't think that's happening either.
No, I think that you're going to see more moves like Carlos Gonzalez in terms of position players. You're not going to see any blockbusters by any means for position players. Because, look, outside leadoff hitter, where else is there a need for a position player? I think the biggest hole with a position player, biggest question going forward, really, is Ben Zobrist coming back? And I think it's fair to say, even though it's not official, the answer is probably no.
Yeah, I don't see him coming back. I just really don't see it. And honestly, if he does, he's going to be essentially the trade, the biggest trade you could make.
Yeah, exactly. Where are you going to find a guy? Who would be available on any sort of trade market right now? You're not going to find any right now. Obviously, you'd look more at the trade deadline. But again, I think that if they were to get somebody, it would have to be like taking a flyer on somebody. You're not going to put in a bunch of chips, especially for a rental guy. It's just, I don't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm just looking at the Cubs' top farm players, and yeah, they're not trading Nico Horner unless they get something huge. They're not trading Amaya. They're not trading Azalea.
The one guy that I think is going to be main trade bait is going to be Ian Happ.
Yes, that's a trade bait right there. Because
honestly, if you could get something good for him, I say just do it.
Absolutely. And he's even though Nico Horner is looking like he's going to be a better player, it's Ian Happ has major league experience, and you've seen that he has major league power.
Yeah, there's some value there. Obviously, being sent down and having ups and downs in the minors can affect your value, but he's at least proven he can hit for power in the big leagues.
Yes. Yep. And he strikes out a lot, but,
and he can walk.
He can walk, and he's got power.
And he's versatile. He's played second, he's played outfield, he's done a little bit of everything, so that adds a little value there. If there's a team out there that's looking to rebuild and you take a chance on somebody, I think that wouldn't be a bad guy to look at, though I could understand the hesitation with the struggles and ups and downs in the minors this year and, struggling to be consistent last year. But I also think I could see reasons for teams wanting to take a try on him. You could see both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's always, for a guy that is able to walk and has pop and can play multiple positions, has experience at the major league level, you'll always find a suitor for that person. I feel like, look at Jorge Soler. We got Wade Davis for him.
Yeah.
And I feel like Ian Happ has as much upside as Jorge Soler.
Jorge Soler he had a lot of injury problems, so that could affect your value even more.
Yeah, and it's funny. Jorge Soler got brought up. Is my friend Gary texted me yesterday and was like, Jorge Soler is on pace to have 40 home runs, and I looked and I was like, huh, yeah, he is on pace to have 40 home runs. He's still got a negative WAR.
I mean, he's on pace to also have like a sub 300 on base percentage.
Yeah, so I'm like, that is like a Rob Deere, Pete Incaviglia type guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're all sitting here thinking, man, where would this team be if they had Jorge Soler? Probably not much different. I mean, his defense is pretty bad.
No, there's nobody that goes, man, if we could only have Jorge Soler back. Nobody's saying that. It's if a guy has that many home runs and is a negative WAR player, oof.
Yeah, and look, I appreciated what Jorge Soler did for us young in his young career. The 2015 postseason, he was a hero. That guy was a monster. Him and Schwarber are pretty much the main reasons they went that far. But after 2015, honestly, you forget he was on the World Series team. Were there any moments in 2016 outside a few big home runs in the regular season where you remember Jorge Soler doing anything? He barely played in the World Series. He barely played in the postseason. I don't even remember him getting any postseason hits in 2016. I mean, look, 2015 in the NLDS, he had 500, 769 OBP and slugged 1.571, an OPS north of 2,000 with 2 home runs. But after that, in 2016, he had 2 hits the entire postseason of 2016. And in the World Series, he only had 6 plate appearances. So it was pretty clear from the beginning to me that he was just not part of the long-term solution for the Cubs in right field or just part of the team. I mean, when they signed Hayward, that pretty much kind of made him a Jordan Howard-like player until they traded him.
Right, absolutely. And when the Cubs signed him, I was very excited because he was really young. Wasn't he like 18 or something, 18, 19 when they signed him?
Yes. He was very young, and he showed really good promise in 2014 when he came up for those 24 games.
Right. And so I don't have any regrets about that because, you know, I've heard, I mean, not too many people, but I've heard a few people talk about how that was a blunder, and I don't. Because that was you have to take advantage of international players before the rules all change. And they took advantage of who was, you know, one of the top international players. They signed him young and they signed him a big deal, but it was not crazy big. It was not like, you know, astronomical, but so it was I thought it was a great signing based on what they saw, and he ended up playing in the majors, and you got Wade Davis for him, so it's not a complete failure.
And come on, he was one of the reasons you won the 2015 NLDS. He was really one of the only. Him and Schwarber were like the only people who consistently hit in that postseason. Right. You don't have Jorge Soler, you don't have Schwarber, they don't go anywhere.
Right. And that was that helped project this team, or, you know, propel this team to where they ended up going into the World Series and winning. You know, that took them to the next level.
It is funny. I remember going to 2015 thinking Jorge Soler was going to be like our top guy in terms of like hitting. I thought he was going to be leading in home runs, slugging. Like, you know, we all knew about Rizzo. I mean, Bryant was going to be coming up. Javi Baez was going to be a thing. But I thought, man, this guy Jorge Soler, he is going to be like our great slugger. And it didn't work out. And part of it not working out wasn't his lack of talent. Again, he was hurt a lot in the minors and in the majors. Last year, 61 games. He was putting up some pretty respectable numbers, 265, 354, 466, an OPS of 820. He had driven in 28 runs, but he got hurt again. It's just very unfortunate. And then what? He played only 35 games in 2017. Only 35. So I think there was another injury issue there.
Yeah, and it's, and a guy that's putting up that kind of home run numbers, you're going to see him stick around this league and get another big contract.
If he can finally stay healthy this year, and look, he may not put up a 300 OBP. It may be like a 290 some OBP, but his OPS is north of 720. And if he does hit like 30 plus home runs, there's definitely going to be a place for him. I think it's pretty fair to say he's going to be a DH. I mean, isn't he pretty much already a DH now?
Yeah, that's a good spot for him. He's not a great defensive player, and he's got an injury history. So
Exactly.
unless he's one of those guys that takes a complete nosedive because they feel out of the game, when they're not in the field, and that there's those guys that happens too. But for the most part, they're going to switch him to DH, and he's gonna be a guy that sticks around for a while because power is always the last thing to go.
Yeah, and when you're fresher and you're not playing in the field and you're not injured as much, obviously you could generate more power. Because if you remember some of those titanic blasts that he did hit with the Cubs, I mean, there was a time I remember when he dented the scoreboard, the new video board in left field. He hit some monster shots. I remember I was at a game in 2015.
He's got massive power. He's like a big, strong guy. I mean, watch him hold a full-size bat, and it looks like a wiffle ball bat.
Yeah. I mean, I saw him play for the Cubs a few games in 2015, and he hit a home run in one of those games. It was hit so hard, I didn't see the ball go out of the park. It was on to Waveland, but as soon as he swung and he hit it and everyone rose, I didn't see the ball anywhere. That's how hard it was hit. There was also a time earlier that season I saw him, he hit a triple off the wall. It was like, you know how at Wrigley you could hit a low line drive that could carry enough to get to the wall but not, quite out, right under the basket? He hit that, and it almost looked like it was going to dent the wall. It was hit so hard. Obviously it wasn't going to, but it was like Bronco Nagurski running into that wall. It just full speed, full power, just an absolute rocket. When that guy connects with the ball, he hits it hard.
Yeah, Pedro Serrano hits straight ball.
That's kind of a good comp, Pedro Serrano.
It really is.
You throw him a fastball, he'll murder it, but he no-hit curveball.
No, and Jobu is not helping.
But does he have to wake up bats with a nice golf club warmer?
That's such a
Just
good
don't
movie.
steal his rum.
That is such a good movie.
It's my favorite baseball movie of all time. I love Major League.
You know what? It's funny. I would have argued, not that it wasn't good, but Field of Dreams was my favorite. And I went back and watched Field of Dreams not too long ago, and it really didn't hold up that well.
I like Field of Dreams. It's not my absolute favorite. It's a little goofy, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah, it just didn't hold up. It's mostly my memories of seeing it early on that are like, oh, Field of Dreams is great. But Major League holds up. Major League is still great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Major League is awesome. And you know what? I know some people don't agree with me, but I liked Major League 2 as well. Obviously not as good as the first one, but I thought Jack Parkman was the greatest baseball movie villain of all time. He was the perfect baseball villain.
Yeah, I mean it's Major League 2 is okay. It's definitely a good watch, but I wouldn't rank it up there with some of the best baseball movies.
Oh God, no. I'm just saying I still like it compared to what other people say about it.
Yeah, but Major League is fantastic. I'm trying to even think do you consider The Sandlot a baseball movie?
Absolutely.
Okay. Sandlot's up there, and I'm very excited about the Sandlot TV show that's in development.
Now, doesn't that have cast members in it? Like the original cast members?
I believe so.
Okay. because I thought I heard that somewhere. I just wasn't completely sure. But yeah, Sandlot, that's a classic.
I also will put up A League of Their Own.
Of course.
Um,
Tom Hanks was brilliant in that movie.
yes, he was very good.
You know what I have a soft spot for, even if it's really silly?
Bad News Bears.
I have a soft spot for... Well, I like that. But the original. A Rookie of the Year is so campy and cheesy, but I enjoy it.
You know what? Like, I can see why. When I saw it first, I was past the age of where I had like any sort of attachment to it. So it was the campiness of it was a little bit lost on me earlier on. And I can see there's movies that I saw when I was a kid that are completely campy, like No Holds Barred with Hulk Hogan. And you go back now and you're like, why in the world would anybody watch this? But for me, I still have the nostalgia of watching it, and I liked it. So now I'll still watch it now, even though it's a dog turd of a movie. So obviously that movie is much better than No Holds Barred, but a lot of the things that people like about it, I was already a little bit older, and that was lost on me. So for me, it's like, it's a movie I saw, and it's okay. It's nowhere near some of my favorite baseball movies. You know what movie I've never seen? Pride of the Yankees.
I haven't watched that in a very long time.
People say, "Oh, that's the best baseball movie." I've never seen it, and I probably should.
You know what I think is one of the best baseball movies ever that doesn't get nearly enough credit? 61.
I was just going to say that. 61. It's not a fantastic movie, but it's sure enjoyable. I do like that movie.
Because it's historically accurate. The guy who played, at least the games are, the actual games that you see. The guy who plays Mickey Mantle, he looks just like him. They casted that movie so well.
Yeah, that was a fantastic movie. I really do like that one. I actually own that one on DVD.
Oh, that's a great one. The other movie that I really like, baseball movie that I enjoy, this is probably one of the absolute classics because it's my dad's favorite baseball movie. It's The Natural.
Bull Durham. Oh, The Natural. The Natural's good. It's another one. If you didn't see it back in the heyday, it's you don't have as much enjoyment. Same thing with Bull Durham. Those are two, they're very good, but if you didn't see it back in the day, you lose a little bit of it. Just like Field of Dreams
on the field. You lollygag. That's my favorite part.
The best is that 61, the guy that played Mickey Mantle is Thomas Jane.
Mm-hmm.
He also played the Punisher in a Punisher movie.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So for me, I saw the Punisher first, and so when I saw this movie, I was like, "Man, they cast the Punisher as Mickey Mantle. That's awesome."
I just remembered another very good baseball movie, 8 Men Out.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Because it's got a lot of good actors in that one. It's got Charlie Sheen. It's got why am I blanking? He's one of my favorite actors, John Mahoney. That's a very enjoyable movie too.
Yeah, definitely, it's a good one. I haven't seen Moneyball, but I heard a lot of people think that one's a good one.
Moneyball's fantastic.
I read the book,
I can't believe
but I never saw the movie.
Seen Moneyball. How have you not seen Moneyball?
I don't know.
Watch it.
Just never was. I read the book, and then I was just like, and if I've read the book, I usually, unless it's Harry Potter, I usually don't go see the movie. But I'll check that one out.
It is very good.
I'm looking at a list right now, and they put Fever Pitch on there. And that movie was terrible.
I never saw it.
It's not.
You know what I thought was very mediocre? The one where Kevin Costner is like 40 years old and he's trying to like come back with the Tigers.
Yeah, what's that one called? Jeez Louise. The Rookie.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's that good.
No, it's just too cornbally. Like they out cornballed anything that they could have expected.
And look, I don't want to like say like Kevin Costner is terrible, but sometimes I think he's very bland.
Yeah,
I liked him in Field of Dreams, but in that one,
You know, it's one I do like, and I wouldn't say it was a good movie, but I liked it. It was enjoyable. Is John Goodman as the Babe?
Oh, that movie was terrible.
It was. I saw it though. I saw it like I don't know. I was like a teenager, and I was like, I love John Goodman.
I do too, but
I wouldn't say it was a good movie, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it, but I would never like be like, oh, top baseball movie.
I'll admit, I actually did like that movie as a kid, but when I learned more and more about Babe Ruth and how inaccurate that movie is, I'm like, wow, this is pretty bad because
it's terribly inaccurate.
Because like his whole life, even like as a rookie, he's like, oh, he's this big, fat, ugly guy. When Babe Ruth came up at the Red Sox, he was very fit. He didn't get fat until like fame got the best of him. In the middle of his Yankees tenure. That's just one of many inaccuracies. Though most of that movie was filmed at Wrigley.
Yeah, yes it was.
And you could kind of tell. Like the way they try to make Wrigley look like Yankee Stadium, you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
And they use like in Fenway Park, they use like this minor league stadium in the middle of nowhere, and you look around and it's like a field and trees, and you're supposed to be in Boston.
It's ridiculous. I mean, especially if you've been to Fenway before.
You know what else?
Like it's kind of like Wrigley, where it's in the middle of a neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. There should be buildings around it. Like the stadium itself kind of looked like old Fenway, but like you could tell it was like in the middle of nowhere. I just found that funny. The other thing I found really funny was, do you remember the scene with the called shot? And like everyone is booing and throwing like lemons at him for whatever reason. And then as soon as he hits the home run, everyone starts like cheering and waving their hats.
As you do. When somebody that you hate does something great, you're like, oh, well, now I like them.
Yeah.
That's how that works, right?
Exactly. Though the Babe Ruth story, the original movie biopic based on Babe Ruth, is 10 times worse.
Oh, I've only seen parts of it, and it was atrocious.
Even Babe Ruth himself, he walked out of the theater because it was so bad. I actually read that somewhere. I don't know if it's true or not, but because they made that movie like right before the Babe died, and like he was at the premiere, and like he just like left in the middle of the movie. He's like, this is shit.
Oh, man.
I dare you to watch the whole thing. It's on YouTube. I dare you.
I'm going to. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to wipe my palate out with 8 Men Out.
There you go.
So yeah, homework, everybody, is a challenge. Watch the original Babe Ruth story on YouTube and report back to us if you can sit through it and not have vomit in your mouth.
Oh boy.
So do you want to talk the Cubs games this week a little bit, or do you want to talk the draft?
I guess we'll talk about the games first.
All right. So, we had, I guess, 2 and a makeup game series this week. And they were looking at it when we looked at it from our last episode. The single game against the Angels, then a Rocky series, and then the Cardinals, and then coming off of just getting swept by the Cardinals. I think, we were looking potentially negatively at the schedule from this week, because the Rockies are a team that could just score some runs. The Cardinals just swept you, and the Angels I think we thought that was their best chance of winning, this week. But they really came out and played much better this week. And you had talked last week how the Cubs were scoring all the runs on home runs, and they weren't having these sustained at bats of knocking a guy in, getting on base, knocking a guy in, and getting in base. And that's exactly what they did against the Angels.
Oh, it was beautiful. And you know what? They were added, I should say, they were owed, not added, owed. They were owed a little BABIP luck after all the bad BABIP luck they've had. And you can tell. Because you saw some of those run scoring hits were bloops and grounders that found holes. And it felt right because so much of that has gone against them, but now it didn't. So that was kind of nice to see as well. And it was the first game for Carlos Gonzalez.
Yeah, it was so that was a plus there. You saw John Lester lock it up and have a great game. Went 7 innings, sprinkled 4 hits, only 1 earned run, only 1 walk. Did really well against Mike Trout, who is a guy that's getting on base nearly 50% of the time that he goes to plate. And you basically neutralized him the whole game.
Yeah, what was really interesting about that game was that was probably the final game for Albert Pujols at Wrigley.
Really?
Yeah.
Do we
think about it? He's old. The Angels only come here every now and then.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what the schedule is next year, but yeah, I doubt they come here again.
Well, because think about it, they're not going to play here for at least another 2 years because you rotate with divisions.
Yeah, what's how many more years does Pujols have on that contract?
I know it's a few more, but I mean, I don't even know how long he's going to last.
He's going to ride that contract out. It's too much money. I mean, he's got a ton of money, but he's going to ride that contract out.
Well, he'll try, but I mean, physically, like if there's an injury or something, I mean, I don't know. He's over 40 now, I believe, or he's right at 40. Either way, it could very well have been his last at bat at Wrigley, that last one he had.
And you know what, though? If that's the case, and as much as I hated his tenure as a Cardinal and all the things he did against the Cubs, because of that rivalry, if that is his final appearance at Wrigley, don't you feel a little bit sad that there was not more fanfare about it?
Yeah, it was almost like when Pujols was there, it was like it was nothing. And that's kind of how I felt about Albert Pujols, at least for the general reception of him. Like when he hit his 600th home run and he hit his 3,000th hit, like if he was still in St. Louis, I bet you that'd be a huge deal. Now, it's just all, meh.
You know what? That happens is when a guy stops being great and just becomes a stat collector, which is where he's at in his career. The guy is a Hall of Famer. Even if he doesn't collect any more stats, he's a Hall of Famer. And, but, he's gotten to that point in his career where he is not great anymore. He's just a guy, and he's collecting stats and just padding everything, padding an already Hall of Fame resume. So the fanfare kind of gets lost because the greatness is gone.
And Pujols hasn't been a Cardinal since 2011, so like that big, rival towards him, it's long gone.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so that game against the Angels was a really good wake-up game. You neutralize Mike Trout. You knock in a lot of guys, beat up on Trevor Cahill. Even after that weird, I hate those weird where you start a reliever and then go to your starter.
Oh, the opener.
Yeah, I hate those.
Yeah, I don't get what the point is.
I don't either.
Is it to like throw off the batters? Like it's like, oh, you see this guy in the first inning, but here's another one. But that doesn't really make sense to me either.
Yeah, it just I don't understand. I mean, maybe there's some sort of math and numbers around it, and I would imagine that there has to be somewhere, but I don't understand it. And I wish somebody that was a smarter numbers guy than I could, sit down and explain it to me.
Because we saw Craig Counsell do that last year in the NLCS. I don't know if he did it in the NLDS, but I remember him doing it against the Dodgers.
Yeah, I don't know if it's... I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's something where your starter doesn't see, or the top of the order doesn't see your starter as many times, so you can go a little deeper. I don't know. I don't know, but that was a game with Trevor Cahill. They started, or they had an opener, went to Trevor Cahill, and then we beat the crap out of him.
Former Cub great. Maybe it's a way to like you take your regular starter and like extend him, go deeper into the game.
But I don't understand why that would make him go deeper, because if he's going to go as deep as he goes, and what did Cahill go, like 4 2/3? Just because he went into the 6th inning doesn't mean he went 6 innings.
Yeah, I don't really know.
They still used a bullpen guy. I don't understand. But I don't know. Maybe I'll see if there's anything online that can kind of explain it, because it is interesting, because I would, if some weird yokel manager for a terrible team did it, you'd be like, okay, weirdo. But I would say Craig Counsell is a pretty smart baseball guy, and he did it too. So there's got to be some numbers out there that show that in situations it's beneficial. There's got to be some out there, and I just don't.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's face it, Craig Counsell knows a hell lot more about baseball than we do, and you've seen what Craig Counsell can do with just simple coaching and scouting. Look at the way they're always positioned properly to defend. I think there's something to be said about that. The Brewers don't have a lot of elite defenders, but when they're set up correctly against the right guys, that makes your defense better. So I think there's a lot to be said about the way Craig Counsell has coached that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's got to be some sort of stat. And I don't know if it's matchups where you start a guy that's going to be a good matchup against the top of the order, and then you take him out. I don't know. Maybe that's something, but I'll look into it.
Yeah.
But then you started a 3-game set with the Rockies, and you liked having Kyle Hendricks go in that first game, and he ended up not having a very Kyle Hendricks game. I mean, he did okay. He ended up with 10 strikeouts, 1 walk, went 7 innings, but sprinkled more hits than usual, gave up 3 runs.
To his credit, the Rockies are a pretty good hitting team.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad outing by any stretch, but it wasn't. You wouldn't go, oh, that's one of his ace efforts, especially after some of his other recent performances. But and I think actually wasn't this the Gonzalez's debut against the Rockies?
His debut was against the Angels, because remember he made that great catch at the wall.
Oh, you're right. You're right. So you did have the Cubs bats come alive. Baez with a home run, Schwarber with a home run.
A big one.
The one thing that
Schwarber home run, my God.
The one thing that pissed me off, and it could have been anybody else, is Hendricks gave up a home run to Daniel Murphy.
Oh God, don't even get me started. Just looking at him, I just grinded my teeth.
Guy just makes me want to punch him in the dumb face.
God. And you'd watch him slug the ball over the field. I'm like, all right, asshole, why didn't you do that with us? Even though it's weird. You look at his numbers with the Cubs last year in the 35 games he played, they were pretty good numbers. But I just remember him going off in the first week here and then just dropping the hell off pretty much the rest of the way and never coming up big in a big situation as a Cub. And you darn well know if he was on the other team against the Cubs in that same situation, he would have come through.
Yeah, I felt like after that first, burst, he just was hitting fielding practice for the second baseman.
Oh, yes, seriously. Seriously. And you know what's, I don't know about you, but every time they showed Murphy like getting on base or hitting a home run against the Cubs that week, you saw that little smirk on his face. And I'm thinking he was probably loving it. He was loving killing the Cubs again. He was probably
Yeah. Oh,
soaking it all
absolutely.
in. He'll always be a Cubs villain, always.
Yeah. Ugh. But yeah, the Cubs offense came to the rescue in that game with a 6-3 win. And then there was Wednesday's game 2 of that series that just, I don't know how you were sitting in that game, but like I was on pins and needles.
Me too.
And you hear people outside of Chicago are like, oh, back and forth game, fantastic, blah, blah, blah. No, it is nerve wracking. It is not fun. It was an ugly, wild game. You had a decent start from Yu Darvish. Only 2 earned runs. He went over 5, which is not great, but it's getting the job done. Only 3 walks, and then Brad Brock.
Yeesh. I know that the start didn't look fantastic numbers wise, but I actually thought Yu Darvish looked really good in that game.
Yeah, I think so too. It was a solid effort from him.
The leadoff walk was a pitch that had a lot of movement, and Wilson Contreras dropped it. If he doesn't drop it, that's called strike 3. That made a big difference. And also, one of those runs that scored was when Kyle Ryan came in, and one of those runs was also unearned. It was set up by that wild throw. So, I don't know. I think Darvish deserved a lot better that start because his first few innings, he was mowing him down.
Yeah, and that's nice to see. It's real nice to see. You hope that he can start putting a full game of that together.
Yeah, for sure. I got to tell you, one thing that I have liked watching lately has been Yu Darvish. Even though he's not going deep into games, I think he's looked a lot better. Now, I'm saying this before he takes the start tomorrow in Colorado, and as you know, Colorado is not a pitcher-friendly place, so you can see maybe a not-so-great outing there, but I've really liked what I've seen from him lately, I must say.
Absolutely. When he's on, he's just got incredible stuff. And I'm not even going to say that he's got the best stuff on the Cubs because when any of these Cubs starters are on, they can just mow a lineup down. Honestly, at this point, John Lester might have the worst stuff of this bull or the starting rotation, but Darvish just has amazing stuff. It's the control and giving up walks.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. So you wasted you get the win, but you wasted a good start from him. What bailed you out on that one is the David Bodie coming out party.
Putting up a Ryan Sandberg-like line on the game.
And he looked fantastic. And that's, with Addison Russell hurt and giving playing time at second to Bodie, like I think you're seeing good things. I like David Bodie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on MLB Trade Rumors, and I don't know if you ever read the comments on there. I don't know why I read the comments on anything, but man, there were a lot of people beating up the Cubs for the contract that they gave to Bodie.
Why? It was like nothing.
And I don't understand. The guy's gonna earn more than that in arbitration.
When did you read this exactly?
Maybe yesterday.
Because I guarantee you about a month ago, those were the same people saying they needed to trade Bryant and start Bodie every day.
Probably. It's just like that contract was nothing. It was, it was good for Bodie because he's getting that guaranteed money now. But what you're getting is you're paying him what you'd pay him in arbitration. If the guy at this point is a a 1.8 WAR player every season, he's more than made that contract up.
Absolutely. You can't expect him to be an everyday player, an all-star, but if he's doing what he's doing off the bench, playing some good defense, coming up with some big hits, you'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, when he's a guy that can play second, he can play third. He's a solid defender, and he is a very clutch hitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't understand the hate for him. I feel like people just dislike him, or they dislike Theo, and I don't know where the bias is coming from, because if you're going to beat up Theo, that's not the thing you beat him up on. And like, who doesn't like David Bodie? Like, I don't understand that he's just like a smiley, nice guy. I don't understand, who.
I don't think people necessarily dislike David Bodie. I think people just want something to complain about.
People love to complain.
I think that's just all it is. People just want to complain about something.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if Theo fed the poor, they'd be like, well, they didn't give him quality enough food. It did not have the proper ratio of carbohydrates to protein. Oh, but they didn't give Bryce Harper the money. Why are you giving it to them? You could use them. You could use the money that you gave to David Bodie and applied it to a partial contract for Bryce Harper, and then you would have gotten Bryce Harper playing in there instead of, and you could have moved Jason Hayward to center field, and then you would have had a much better outfield, and that's why I am mad.
We could fly and trade with the Cubs and get up in the draft. Hey.
It's the same people that were bitching that the Cubs drafted a catcher. Why would they draft a catcher? We got Wilson Contreras, and he's going to be good for a long time. And, that just seems stupid.
I think that's a perfect opportunity to segue into the draft, because, I mean, I know there's more to talk about over the week, but I just want to say something really quick, segueing into the draft.
Sure.
We're not drafting people that are going to be up in the big leagues this year or next year. These are guys who are going to be up in several years. So I never understand the over-complaining about the draft when it's really hard to evaluate high school and college kids in a game where you need to go through multiple levels of training, conditioning, and all of that.
You're drafting, I mean, roughly half of the players drafted are in high school still.
Yeah.
They've not even graduated high school. So if you're looking at the NFL draft or the NBA draft, those are players that you expect to come in day one and help you. And if they don't, then you can, judge them negatively. But in the NHL, and much more so in baseball, how many rounds are there in the Major League Baseball draft? Like 40 rounds?
That's a lot.
You are drafting so many players, and so many of them are high school kids, and you're drafting children. So like, you have to wait until they're grown men. Like you're projecting what a child is going to do as a grown man. Like it's a really hard thing. So like, you're not drafting out of need. If you draft in the Major League Baseball draft out of need, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Now, with that in mind, I know that Theo is technically drafting for the need to develop pitching. It is a need, but again, that's a developmental need, not a direct need for the team. The goal is to develop pitching through the system. That's why he's taken a lot of pitchers, but it's not like, oh, we need another bullpen guy, let's draft one. That's nowhere near what.
Yes, it's a future need, because it's not sustainable to pay $20 million plus a year to every starter. Not sustainable. And what's going to happen is your young hitters are coming up with contracts due. So the goal is to develop pitchers so you have cheap pitchers when the hitters are due their contracts, and then you can pay those position players and then have the young pitching. That's the goal. It's not, oh, we need a starter right now. That's silly. He's drafting, projecting a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not going to go through every player because I have not seen a single one of these players play. Not a one.
No, I've just seen a few tweets about them and some footage of them. I know one of the guys they drafted throws 100 miles an hour. I saw footage of that. I know the guy they drafted, their first round pick. I know he was slated a little lower on the rankings, so some people were surprised by that. But I mean, other than that, it's not like I have full scouting reports on a bunch of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So I've heard a couple people talk about how this draft, after the first 8 to 10 picks, there was not much difference in level of play between the players from 11 through 40. You're looking at a very similar type of guy, maybe even a little more than that. But there's a big chunk of guys where there's not a huge differentiation between them. So when you slate these guys, I had them slated a little later. In this big pack of guys, there's not a huge difference. So, it's opinion at that point. So Ryan Jensen, the first round pick for the Cubs, where they draft 27th.
Yeah.
I think they had the 27th pick. Yeah, Keith Law had him as the 32nd ranked player. So, okay, a couple of slots down. And Fangraphs had him ranked between 25th and 40th. So, smack dab in the lower end of that one. So, it's not like, oh, man, the Cubs majorly reached on this guy. They signed a college pitcher who's got a high ceiling. He's not polished, but he throws 98 miles an hour. And here's the thing. They already signed him. And he was slotted at a $2.5 million bonus slot, and they got him for $2 million. So you're able to apply more money to somebody else, and that's exactly what they did. Is in the 6th round, they drafted Ethan Hearns, the top high school catcher in the draft, and he was committed to going to Mississippi State. So he was apparently a 2nd round grade player, a low to mid 2nd round. So a top player. And he dropped because there was issues with signability, because everybody was convinced he was going to go to college and you were just going to lose out on that. The Cubs drafted him in the 6th round, and they took, at the point he was drafted, Ethan Hearns was a $250,000 slot bonus. And the Cubs gave him somewhere between $1 and $2 million. So he got a much, much bigger bonus because the Cubs were able to save money somewhere else. And now they've got who was named the top catcher in high school and a 2nd round guy, and they got him in the 6th. So
Look out, Wilson Contreras. Am I right?
So that's called being smart. Is even if Ryan Jensen wasn't their number 1 guy, he was their 2nd guy. All right, well, we like this guy a little bit better, but we can save and we can get somebody we really like that we would have lost out on. So get 2 for 1. Isn't that the smarter way to do it? So, Theo's a smart guy, and he played this one pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you there.
And I'm sure you've heard a lot of people talk about how, maybe Ryan Jensen, they can fast track him and put him in the bullpen right off the bat because he doesn't have an arsenal of pitches, but he pitches 98 miles an hour. Here's the thing.
What?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm trying to wrap my head around that logic.
Here's the thing. I mean, because most bullpen arms are fastball, changeup. And you need a bigger arsenal of pitches to be a starter. So they're like, oh, this guy's going to be a bullpen arm and maybe a closer and, whatever. But here's the thing. The guy, late in the games, 6th, 7th, 8th innings, was still throwing 98 miles an hour. So that means the guy's got the stamina to be a starting pitcher. Like if you drafted him in the first round, don't just pigeonhole him as a closer right off the bat. Give the guy a chance to be a starter. That's what he's been doing.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you throw hard and you're not polished doesn't mean you're going to be successful. I don't get that thinking.
Yeah. That's been kind of the White Sox MO for a while, is take their guy, start him in the bullpen, and then eventually move him to the starter role. But I don't know if that's just always the best thing.
No, I think times have changed a little bit. I don't think that's always the right thing to do. We've seen it work with Chris Sale and some other guys, but it also hasn't worked recently with like Carson Fulmer or guys like that.
Yeah, I feel like it's not the technique, it's the guy. So Chris Sale was going to work out no matter what, and Carson Fulmer was going to not work out no matter what. So it's not the technique that you're using. It's the a lot of it's the guy. So I like the Cubs, drafted some more polished players with their starting pitching in the last few drafts. But this guy is more of a project, but he's got a higher ceiling. So you're kind of varying the type of guy that you're drafting. So you're drafting, mostly right-handed starting pitchers. You're drafting a variety of right-handed starting pitchers.
Yeah. Which, if you have that many guys, it's easier to have a project where your overall goal is to develop pitching within the system. It's hard when you don't have a huge handful of guys. Now that you do have a huge handful of guys, I think it increases your chances of success there, because not everyone's going to work out naturally.
And the only other guy I want to talk about with the Cubs is their second round pick, Chase Strumpf. He's a second baseman and very likely will be playing in the College World Series. But the only reason I bring him up is that apparently when he got drafted, he was in the on-deck circle, came to bat, hit a home run, and as he was running around the bases, his dad came running, talking about how he just got drafted by the Cubs, and he was like, "That's great. I don't have time to celebrate. I'm in the middle of a game."
That's
kind of a cool story. He hit a home run, as he was getting drafted.
That is pretty cool.
But he's apparently, from all I'm reading, is a very similar player to Nico Horner. So that's definitely a solid pick, because Nico Horner's a good player. And then while we're on it, just want to talk about the White Sox pick. They sort of got a default pick because there was a handful of guys at the top of the draft. The White Sox picked third, and it was whoever got drafted in front of them. So they ended up with Andrew Vaughn, who is basically a bat. Not much of a fielder, but he is, from everything I read, the best hitter in the draft. 2018 Golden Spikes player, absolute, beast at the plate. Probably will be a DH, first baseman type player for his career. But good on the White Sox, because that's another big bopper in your batting order that you can add in a couple years.
Yeah, I know a lot of people really praise the White Sox for that pick, and I think a lot of other teams around the White Sox, including the Detroit Tigers, really wanted him. So I'd say that's a pretty good choice right there, at least for now.
Yeah, and it was kind of one of those ones that, there was kind of these top couple guys, and then, whoever the first two picks were, whoever was left falling to the White Sox. And I think for the White Sox, this was probably, a good choice, because you only got a couple more years out of. I mean, you'll probably sign your first baseman to another short-term contract, but by the time he's done, you're going to be looking for this guy to come in and replace him as your first baseman / DH. And kind of the timeline fits. So it works out for the White Sox. And I think it's a good pick. And so, yeah, congratulations. It's always nice when the guy you want falls to you.
Absolutely.
I mean, quickly wrapping back to the games this week. Do you know what Cole Hamels' numbers are in his career as a Cub, which is not a long career, but his career as a Cub versus the Cardinals, what his numbers are?
It's got to be a sub-2 ERA, yes?
It is. He has given up 1 earned run in 3 starts. He's given up 1 earned run in 22 innings for a 0.41 ERA. It's
pretty good.
Yeah, it is the lowest ERA for a Cubs pitcher against the Cardinals since Lefty Tyler in 1918.
Lefty Tyler.
Lefty Tyler, 1918. We all remember Lefty Tyler from 1918, right?
Oh, of course. I got his jersey, his baseball card, his autographed hat. I got a big poster that says 2016 World Series champions in memory of Lefty Tyler.
Yeah, I remember when my great grandfather met him in the 1908 in the bus depot.
They had brewskis together.
Goodness gracious, Lefty Tyler in 1918.
I love those old time names.
I love those. Every left-handed pitcher was Lefty.
Every single one.
I mean, because there was only like 6 of them. They were all lefty. Lefty Grove, Lefty Tyler, Lefty Johnson. Everybody's lefty. Yeah. Thursday's game against the Rockies. Quintana actually had an all right game.
I actually thought he was really good. That 1 run shouldn't have scored. Bryant missed the ball in the sun.
Yeah, you had no offense. No offense whatsoever.
Shocking. It was a kid making his debut. Every time somebody makes their big league debut against the Cubs get absolutely owned. It's
hilarious because I remember I'm probably like 10 years old, and the Cubs were playing the Pirates, and it was the kid's first start ever. His first start ever, and he just mowed the Cubs down, went like 8 scoreless innings. And I still, from that day, I'm just like, man, every time it's a rookie player's first start against the Cubs, he mows them down. Like, what is the issue here? And it was another case in point of this. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, I think part of it is just you don't have a full scouting report on the kid and that kind of thing. You've never seen him before, but still, it just, they looked completely lost. The bats in that game, they just looked like so disinterested. I mean, I'm sure they were trying to win, but they just looked completely lost.
Yeah, they did, and it was frustrating after great win against the Angels, and then a good win the first game of the series against the Rockies, and then pulling out a tough one the night before. You're like, okay, you feel like the Cubs bats are alive, and they just nope.
Yeah, which, oh well. At least they won that series. It's frustrating, but you can live with it.
Yeah, you'll live with it. Winning 3 out of 4 there. And then coming in, you're like, okay, here's the Cardinals series. And no matter what happened earlier in the week, this was, this was the make or break for the week. Right? I mean, because this is team that just swept them, division rival. Absolutely. It's a tight division. And you get Cole Hamels coming in and just running roughshod over the Cardinals lineup. 8 innings, 3 hits, 10 strikeouts, no earned runs. Just mowed them down.
Yeah, he looked brilliant, and he wasn't really in any stressful situations. It just, yeah, I saw the game recap. I missed most of the game, but it was like a symphony. Just, it seemed like every time I checked the score, like after every minute, the inning was already over when he was pitching. Like he was just boom, 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 inning over, boom, 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 inning over. And he finished his outing with 3 strikeouts in a row. He struck out the side to end his game.
Yeah, I mean, gave up 4 base runners in the whole game. Like, he looked great.
Props to him, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, he is working himself into a new contract with the Cubs.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't give him anything more than 2 years, but
No, but that's still a new contract.
yeah, we'll see what happens there, because if he is good all season, I would want him back, even though he's 35.
Here's my thing: is I wish instead of picking up the option, the Cubs would have just signed him to a 2-year contract right off the bat.
I agree.
And instead of 1 year, $20 million, you'd have been like, let's do 2 years, $30 million. So it's guaranteeing him $30 million, and it's cheaper for the Cubs. And I was very confident that this year would be a good year, and then you got what you got the next year. Now you put yourself in a position where he's probably not going to want a 1-year contract. You're probably going to have to sign him to at least a 2-year contract, and then you're making yourself iffy there.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if he does really good, you're like, well, we need a reliable pitcher. He's been reliable, but he's going to be 36. I mean, one of the things that he has been doing his entire career has not only been consistently good throughout most of his career, but he's been very durable. He's been very, very, knock on wood. I don't want to say that now and he gets hurt, but so far, he's been very durable.
I would love for him to get to pitch in another World Series.
Oh, yeah. He's got pretty good postseason numbers.
He does. He does indeed. So yeah, I mean, that would be cool. He's just been pitching really well this year. He had a couple of rough outings, but for overall, he's been pitching really well this year. You have to be happy with what you're getting from him.
Absolutely. And you saw a blip, but he's rebounded.
Yeah, everybody in this rotation has had a blip, more than a blip. But I think Cole Hamels has probably been the steadiest. You've seen John Lester just be dominant and then have some real rough starts, dominant, rough starts. But I think Cole Hamels, Kyle Hendricks have been the 2 most consistent.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about John Lester's outing yesterday.
Yeah. So that's what I was going into. And I didn't watch the game live. I watched recap afterwards because I went out, and I was actually right near Wrigleyville. I was just down the street on Belmont, and I went to see a band, and I was there earlier with a buddy, and we got some food and went record shopping and whatever. And I saw so many stupid Cardinals fans.
Really?
Like, I saw a ton, and I was like, where are, it's not like their stadium's selling out. Like, where are they coming out of the woodworks from? And looking into the crowd, like, I mean, at least from the far away camera view, it looks blue. So I don't know if I just was running into the clusters or
a group.
Yeah, but there was several groups, and I looked in. I was walking past Giordano's, and I looked in, and there was like a ton of Cardinals fans in Giordano's. And clearly, they were Cardinals fans because otherwise they would have been Lou Malnati's.
I think when you go to places like that, that's where all like the out of towners go. And the other thing is too, I'm kind of surprised because I think most St. Louis people tonight are watching the Blues. Or at least this weekend. Yeah, well, I mean, the Blues didn't play last night, so maybe that was the thing, is they go to that game and then watch the Blues.
Yeah. So, and speaking of the Blues, have you been looking at the Twitter back and forth between Pam and Jim from The Office?
Yeah, as much as I hate this Stanley Cup final matchup, that's been fun.
That the best was when Pam said she's like, yeah, I'm going home with Stanley.
That was great. That was great.
So I was like, all right, I'm on Team Pam on this. It's funny. I don't want either team to win. I'm tired of Boston fans because they've become worse than Yankee fans.
I agree.
And it's funny because they've always hated the Yankee fans and they've become worse than the thing they hated. And
well, because not only the baseball team's successful, everybody's winning championships there.
Yeah. So, I mean, they had the Red Sox win, they had the Patriots win, and they have the Bruins in there. You've got a good baseball team or like basketball team in the Celtics. Like it's an embarrassment of riches at this point. But then again, I don't want St. Louis to win at anything ever.
I mean, the St. Louis is probably the Hawks' biggest rival these days. Now that the Red Wings are out of their conference, but I've sat back and I've thought about it, and I just decided if the Blues win, I'm not going to let that bother me too much. I don't want them to win, but I won't. I'm going to try to not be overly upset if they do. I've kind of accepted that it may just be their year, and I think they're going to win. I mean, they could either win tonight or Game 7. That team has caught lightning in a bottle, and it looks like every time they are down, they find a way out. I mean, kind of reminds me of the resiliency of those Blackhawk teams. When you see your team win 3 cups in 6 years, I think it's a little easier to watch a rival team win a Stanley Cup than if the Hawks only won in 2010 or didn't win any at all this decade.
Oh, agreed. It's always, same thing with baseball is it's got to be a lot easier for bitter White Sox fans to see the Cubs win a World Series because they did it first. So it's when you have one in your pocket, it makes eating crow or whatever, watching a rival team win easier to digest. So as much as like I hate all the Patriots winning, it's made worse by the fact that the Bears haven't won in a long time. With the Blues, if they win, you're right, is we've had such a good history over, recent years that I can always look back and be like, okay, yeah, you got 1. Yeah, we got 3. And all of our parades were better.
Right on. The other thing I think, though, that can make you feel bad in this situation is that it really, even though you've known it the past several years, seeing the Blues doing what they're doing is a true humbling reminder that the Blackhawks, your team, is no longer great. They are no longer that team. They are no longer the team everybody strives to beat. That's not them anymore. In the hockey world, they're not irrelevant, but they're not relevant, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're
relevant now. They're a big market, original 6, but they're not relevant.
Well, they're a middle of the road team. They're not good enough to make a push for the Stanley Cup. I mean, sure, maybe they could make a playoff appearance and get kicked out in the first round, but they're also not one of the bottom teams that's gonna. They lucked out in the lottery, but they're not one of the bottom teams that's getting first overall pick. So they're just sort of lost in purgatory.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's easier to deal with when you've seen all the success. What I think is a shame is that you see a lot of things that maybe could have been done differently to keep the window open a little longer. But to Stan Bowman's credit, while I believe he's made a couple of mistakes, he's also made some moves that I think get a little too much flack. And I just think it's hard to sustain success when you have the same core for a number of years and they play so much hockey. I mean, they're eventually going to get worn down. It's a little combination of everything. I sometimes think about 2016, and I think that Blues series that we lost to in 7 kind of got away from us because we blew those 2 games at home in games 3 and 4. If we win one of those, we win that series in 6, and who knows how far we could have gone. I often think about 2014. If we win that game 7 against LA, they have 4 cups in the past decade. But, you've also had some things go right that easily couldn't have. I mean, overall, you got to take what the Blackhawks have done over those years and cherish every moment of it. Because who knows when it's going to come back? Who knows? We may not see that. I mean, you may see it way down the road, but in the Taves and Kane era, maybe you see it again, maybe you don't. We don't know.
I mean, based on the way they improved towards the end of last year, you got to be hopeful. But they need better players on defense. They need to add. They need somebody that can play on that top pairing and be their minutes leading defenseman and play really well. They need that guy. They don't have it. Maybe they've drafted a lot of defensemen over the last few years, and maybe one of them steps up. I don't know. But finding a top 4 defenseman is not real easy. That's why they're drafting so many defensemen.
Yeah.
So I'm not hopeful that they're going to, fill that hole easily. It might be something where they bring up one of the young guys and they, get their lumps in. So for the following season that they're better off. But then again, Seabrook and Keith are going to be even older at that point.
The key, I think, for Keith and Seabrook is if you get some really good defensemen, I think you could see Keith and Seabrook play better if their ice time is cut way down. Because I just don't think they have the stamina. I think that's one of the main things. It's not a loss of talent. They just don't have the stamina to be playing 20 plus minutes every night.
They just don't have the wheels and they don't have the stamina. And if you could pair them against, not the top line for the opposing team, you get better use of your miles there. And you're right. So if you could move them down, if Duncan Keith was in your second pairing, you're like, okay, that makes you better. And if Brent Seabrook is a bottom 6, you're like, oh, all right, now we're all right. We're paying him a lot, but I don't think you care what somebody's getting paid if you're winning.
No, you don't. I mean, that's why I think a lot of fans weren't as upset when Seabrook signed the contract versus now, because when he signed the extension, they were still contenders.
Right.
Here's a question for you. Let's say next season, it's about halfway through, and they show no signs of progression and actually get worse. At that point, would you be, if you were Stan Bowman, would you be ready to say, okay, let's just tear the whole thing down and start from scratch?
I mean, you would want to, but you can't because everybody's got a no movement clause. So you can't, and anybody that you could move and get something for has a no movement clause. So you would have to convince them to waive it. And there's certain guys that just won't, that they just want to stay, and they've earned that right. They've earned that contract. So, it's really hard to tear down.
It is. I definitely get that. When I mean tear down, I mean do what you can and try your very best. Here's the thing. I've said this on the show many times. I just don't want to be the next Red Wings. Just years of stuck in mediocrity after one
I
great.
I see that, and I think the where they really went downhill was having that that streak of making the playoffs for that many years, and they were so proud of that. And I think they did a lot of things to boost them up just enough to make it in the playoffs.
I agree
And
100% with that.
And I feel like the Blackhawks have not put in those last efforts. Their efforts were more of a youth movement and moving on from a youth movement, and then they fired a veteran head coach and brought in a very young head coach. So I think those are the movements that they've made, and hopefully that works out, and we're able to bounce back into being a contending team sooner. Whereas the Red Wings are still years away from being a good team.
I think that's a very valid point, because one of my good friends from college, he's a diehard Red Wings fan, and he basically said those last few years, they were just doing enough to get to the playoffs to extend that streak. And everybody knew as soon as they got to the playoffs, they would be losing in 5 in the first round.
Right. And, that was poor management. And I see the benefit of making the playoffs. I mean, it's you added revenue and makes your team seem relevant, but the fact of the matter is it's not good for your team long term for your success.
No, and I mean, NHL playoffs are such a crapshoot at times, but even with the crapshootiness of playoff hockey, the thing is, there are clearly teams that make the playoffs that are obviously not going anywhere. And you know what? Those old Red Wing teams, they pretty much had no chance.
Right. Absolutely. So I want to get back real quick. Was that Cargo that just hit a home run?
It was right into the basket. His first as a Cub.
Nice. And he's strutting around like he owns this place. Good for him.
I love Cargo. I'm so glad he's here. That bat flip, the way he dropped the bat, it wasn't really a flip. It was more of a drop, but that was beautiful.
You know what? Even though the average is not great, I feel like he's been all right. Like
he's been having very good at bats.
Yeah, he looks a lot better when you watch him than the numbers are showing.
Yeah, absolutely. The at bats are good. I think he adds kind of that veteran presence to the team that maybe was lacking a little bit. Speaking of veteran presence, I know we've been talking so much about the Cubs on the show, but did you see how Jason Hayward and David Ross convinced Craig Kimbrel, or at least helped recruit him? I thought that was cool.
Yeah. I would love for David Ross to be brought back to this team in some sort of, coaching capacity.
I would too.
I think he's got the chops to be a manager someday.
I think so as well.
And catchers have a great history of being great managers. So he's got that. He's got the leadership skills because, when he joined this team and he should have been the type of player that you just forgot was even on this team. A personal catcher, is brought over, but he was such a veteran presence that he really helped this team. I don't think they win the World Series without him.
No, of course not.
And so, he's got the leadership skills, and it's not just being lead by example, like, oh, I'm Chris Bryant, I'm a leader because I'm the best hitter on the team. He was a guy that everybody just looked up to, and he brought this presence and this aura with him. And, you look at like a Jason Hayward, paid for him to have a room upgrade for every road trip for his last season. Like, that's the type of things you do when you just have such utter respect for somebody. And, clearly David Ross is a very smart baseball guy. And I just feel like he could be a good one. So it would be awesome to bring him in at some capacity going forward.
For sure.
Last thing I want to talk about the Cubs is, you're right, with the John Lester start yesterday, and we started talking about it before we got derailed, but man, that looked like it was going to be a bad game.
I thought, here's a Tyler Chatwood's game.
Tyler Chatwood last year game. Tyler Chatwood this year is a different game.
I mean, a Tyler Chatwood game as in he'd have to come in and eat a bunch of innings because less.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Thought you meant like a Tyler Chatwood start from last year where you're just like, oh, God. Yeah. So it was a rough start. Zuna and Bader with home runs in the first, and gave up 4 runs right off the bat. And, to the Cubs' credit, they went in, with a 4-run deficit, and they didn't quit. They kept chipping away. And you got, after that first inning, John Lester was really good.
Yes, he was. He adjusted. He said, look, my 2-seamer was getting hammered. I made some adjustments, and he didn't give up a run since.
Yeah, this was his numbers after that first inning. 5 innings pitched, 1 hit, no earned runs.
Pretty good.
That's solid. So, after that, he shut it down, and the Cardinals didn't score again after that first inning, and the Cubs just kept chipping away, and, they scored 2 in the first. And, once, when you're down 4-0, if the other team starts getting in a groove, it makes it real. That seems like a big number to hit, to catch up to. But the thing was that the wind wasn't blowing in. It was not hot, but it was a nice temperature out, so you didn't have any weather concerns. And the Cubs scored 2 right off the bat, so it wasn't a huge deficit. And then you just kept chipping away at it until you got the lead. And at that point, John Lester's cruising, and you're just still scoring runs and end up winning easily after that first point.
Yeah, it was really great to see. It goes to show how good he is. When he doesn't have it right away, he makes adjustments in game. Some pitchers can't do that, but he can.
Right. And that was great to see, because I was nervous. I'm like, oh man, he had a great start against the Angels, and he's falling flat on his face. And no, he had a bad inning. After that, he looked good again. So, if you're just watching the box score and looking at the score of the game, you're like, man, John Lester sucked. But no, he had a rough inning, and then just put it on lockdown. And it's more encouraging when that happens that way, where bad first and you come in and lock it down for the rest of the time you're in, than the other way where you got it locked down, and then your last inning, you just, getting hammered.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have anything else Cubs you wanted to talk.
No.
I guess we'll dive in a little bit at White Sox. There was not too much. We talked the draft. There's 2. I mean, you had 2 series this week, the Nationals and Kansas City. Ivan Nova stinks. He's awful. Dylan Covey is not that good, but he pitched okay against the Nationals. It was Colome who actually blew this one, kind of surprisingly.
He's been so good this year. I guess he was due for one. I don't know.
Yeah, the 2 games I really want to focus on with the White Sox is, the first one was Tuesday's loss to the Nationals, 9-5. The White Sox scored 4 runs in the first inning on Steven Strasburg. And it was like the opposite of what the Cubs did with the Cardinals yesterday. Is the White Sox scored 4 runs off Steven Strasburg, who that's not an easy feat. He's a good pitcher.
Didn't Moncada homer?
What's that?
Didn't Moncada homer?
I believe he did.
And moonshot too.
Yeah. So you have, you scored 4 runs in the first on Strasburg, and you just you squandered that lead. The Nationals scored 6 runs in the 5th inning. You end up with Lopez with 4 innings pitched, 6 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, and 4 walks. And then on top of that, you have Osage come in and do 1 inning, 3 earned runs. So you didn't get any help from your bullpen either. And, here's the thing is, I heard a lot of fans calling in the radio shows and just bashing the manager. Like, why is Renteria? It was his fault they lost. And here's the thing is you have a terrible staff, starting pitching staff. Except for Giolito, which we'll get to in a second. You have a terrible rotation. You've got to get innings out of these guys. You've got to get innings out of your starters, or otherwise you're just going to have no depth on your position players and just carry more bullpen arms. But you've got to get these guys. So it was the 5th inning where the Nationals just really scored a lot of runs. So what are you going to do? Have your starter go 4 innings and just, Lopez gave up runs, and then you bring in a bullpen. They gave up runs too. So I don't, at some point, Ricky Renteria has had some missteps this year, but I don't know if that's one, because your guys got to be able to get out of innings, and you've got to be able to get more innings out of your starting staff.
If you want to talk about Rick Renteria missteps, that's doing things like batting Jose Rondon, Yonder Alonso, and Wellington Castillo in cleanup spots. Those are missteps, and I do not understand any of those.
Right. Or you've got a catcher that's just hammering the ball left and right, and you're taking playing time against him to give him to an aging veteran. Like there are definite missteps where I think he's, you can definitely fault him, but this is not one. I don't think is Lopez has really struggled, but you've got Covey pitching next. Like you've got to get some innings out of these guys. You've been at a point in this season where you did a bullpen start because you don't have starters. So, you've got to get innings out of these guys. And then even when you brought in the bullpen, they blew it too. So you had back-to-back games against the Nationals where your bullpen blew it too. So it's a point where what are you going to do? Is every guy you put in is not succeeding. When does it stop being the manager's fault at that point and become the player's fault?
Well, I think you got to put accountability on both. I do kind of agree with some Sox fans. I don't think Rick Renteria's managed this team all that great this year. I don't know. I think they should move on from him this year. But I do agree that some of these guys just have to do their jobs better. That's part of the game.
Rick Renteria was brought in because he is a great teacher, and he gets a lot out of young ball players, especially young Latino ball players. And
yeah, he's a great coach. I just don't think he's a great manager.
Right. And he is doing what he was brought in to do. He's getting a lot out of some of these young ball players. And I don't think the White Sox will, because they don't do that. But at some point they're going to move on from him and bring in somebody, but it's not going to be now, because he's doing what they wanted him to do. And it was bring some of these younger guys up faster. And I think the best place for Ricky Renteria, and it's kind of what the Cubs offered him, and half offered him because they knew he was going to move on, out of pride, is he would be a great, I don't even know how to describe the position, is like a roving manager for your minor league system, where you come in and you're like a consultant manager, where you come in and you help bring along some guys. You stay for a little bit in Iowa. You stay a little bit in Double A. You go down to Single A. You go down to rookie ball. You come back up to Triple A, and you are constantly just going from place to place in your minor league system, helping motivate your teaching and motivating and getting the most out of your young players. I think that's where he's best. It's day-to-day manager. I don't know if that's the place, but I like Ricky Renteria a lot, and I think he's a smart baseball guy, and I think he's very good given the right role. I think he's in that right role right now for the White Sox, but there's going to be ups and downs with him.
Yeah, I just think I think next year it's time to look elsewhere, but that's just me.
Well, this is also the team that won't fire, or I mean, the same ownership that won't fire Garpak. So,
but we got Meatball Jim Boylan.
We do. We got boy ball. But yeah, the last thing I want to talk about White Sox is the other start I wanted to bring up is yesterday, Lucas Giolito came out and just had another dominant start. And he went 7 2/3, 3 hits, no earned runs, 11 strikeouts, only 2 walks. Is it time to say that this guy is the leader for the AL Cy Young?
Oh, I think he has to be. I mean, he's got a 2.28 ERA. His FIP is best in the league, 2.47. He's got a sub-1 WHIP, 10.7 strikeouts per 9 versus 2.6 base on ball per 9. I know wins are pretty irrelevant these days, but he leads all of baseball in wins, and I feel like Cy Young voting, I think wins still are kind of a thing that can play a factor. But I mean,
I think wins with the voters kind of it helps define who your candidates are.
Yeah.
And then out of those, then they look at the stats. But so to get mentioned in the running, you have to have a certain number of wins. So he's got that. And, and he's just been dominant since he came back from injury.
There's just a very scary report that just came out. CDN37 was the first to report this. Other people are relaying it. I've seen multiple reports on Twitter. We'll wait to see if others can confirm, but sounds like David Ortiz has been hospitalized with a gunshot wound.
What?
Yeah, the David Ortiz, Big Papi.
No.
Yeah.
Man. I hope the guy's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it says hospitalized, so we don't know his condition, but you're hoping that it's not fatal or could be fatal. I hope not. It's terrible enough that this happened if it did indeed happen, but yeah, that's scary.
Jeez. Oh, man.
Prayers for Big Papi, man.
I'm like, he's such a cool dude, and I loved watching him play, even though it was for the Red Sox. Like, I loved watching David Ortiz, and it's just terrible news to hear. I hope it's not true, and if it is, I hope that it's non-fatal.
I hope so too. Or it's not at least, and at the very least, not crippling.
Oh man, it's in the Dominican, so geez, anything could happen down there.
Yeah, so just praying for the best. That's heartbreaking to hear.
Oh man. So should we wrap this up? All right. So I guess that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app. Also, share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the podcast. Follow us on social media at ShyFanPat1, at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. And again, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Denver New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears! Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.